What's going on, y'all?
Hey guys, Leo.
Let's start this thing off with the Are We a 5x5? You guys have already blew up the chat too much, so I can't go back and give my pleasantries. But what's up? What's going on already? Roots, Lucid, Backwoods, Joe, Milkmaid. Oh, Milkmaid's still here, so we'll go ahead and end it and start back again in 20 minutes. 1x5, right on. What's going on, Peach? Ohio, what's going on, guys? All right, so we are waiting on Kay Marie. She is on commie time in California, and so like it's her dinner time right now, so she'll be with us when she gets with us. But until then, we're just gonna go ahead and start this thing.
Right.
What's going on, F Home, Wizard, Stars, Michigan, Kathy,
Hey,
Native, Hippocrates,
Ready? Native, good to see you guys.
Hey, y'all calm down. What's going on, Susanna? All right, guys. Roots, Millicent Roots, what's going on? So this one here is education and entertainment for the community stuff. And I guess we'll just get into it. When Kay Marie gets here, we'll get into the school stuff. Pilgrim sighting, y'all. What's going on with you, bro?
So you guys say school stuff for Kay Marie because I hate school. I hate it then, I hate it now.
The farther I get away from school, the more I wish I would have learned. You know, the more I want to learn, the farther I get away from school.
That is true. I'll give you that. I just don't miss all the, typical high school stuff.
Yes, dude, that's exactly what that means. All right, so you know the basic concept of what we've been doing here, right? The 40 acre square, blah blah blah. All right, so we're going off the we're going to work off the premise that we have between 150 to 200 people. So we need to entertain these people. So obviously we've got the basics, horseshoes, cornhole,
board games,
yeah, just random board games, cards, things like that. But as far as community, like, I know music is a big thing. I've always said music is a big prep, and I know you're a music guy.
Oh yeah, you gotta have music. I mean,
Hey, she might. We don't judge.
music helps keep you calm, or helps keep me calm. You gotta have music. And there's music for every situation.
So as far as the music situation, obviously it would be ideal to have some kind of radio set up, MP3, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, I guess you just can't beat the old-fashioned hands-on, guitars, drums, pianos, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, if you're looking, 150 to 200 people, surely there's enough skill, talent there somewhere. I mean, beat on pots and pans if you have to.
Right.
I got guitars for days.
Sorry, I'm trying to.
Oh, you're good, man.
You know how it is back here. So now, I'm trying not. I don't really want to rabbit hole too hard about, hey, we need like 6 guitars, 2 sets of drums, 4 piano, you know what I mean?
Right.
Let's say out of a population of 150, the chances of people actually being able to play instruments, what do you think the number is? So, I mean, I know a few people who play guitar, but it's, it's one of those things. How many people do actually play it?
And will they do it? And I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it. If they'll even play in front of anybody, how many songs do they actually know? Like, you know, you'd be amazed at how many people can play the intro to like Smoke on the Water. That's it. That's a repertoire, you know.
Yeah, I can play the first 10 seconds of The Beautiful People by Marilyn Manson, and that's it. That's right. My guitar. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I mean, out of that many, there probably wouldn't be many. Like, as far as guitars, you'd be more than likely probably have a couple drummers. I mean, like I was saying, I mean, beating on pots and pans. I mean, if you can keep rhythm, you can play drums. I mean, right. You just got to get your coordination together. But to actually have, out of that few of people, enough to actually form a band and entertain people, it'd be a learning process for everybody, I'm sure.
Do you think? See, I think that would be a good idea, but I don't know if it would be like if it would have to be a mandatory thing or not. But like Matrix said, they're teaching the kids at a young age to play some kind of instrument.
I don't think it's a bad idea. I mean, let them pick, you know, what they want to play, but absolutely.
Yeah, well, like what is that, Stomp?
Yeah, I love that kind of stuff. That is impressive.
See, that's my thing, is I like noise. I don't give two damns about the lyrics most of the time. I just like the noise and the beat. So that's, you know what I'm saying? I don't care if anybody can sing. As long as you can get that constant noise, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, I love rhythm. That's a lot. Like, I got into hip hop, you know, when I was younger, and that was why, just because of the rhythm and the flow, and yeah, more than the lyrics. Recorder. I've got one of those laying around here somewhere.
What's going on, Bob? G-Ma Merkel, what's going on with you?
And it would depend on, you know, what kind of setup you got electricity-wise, too. I mean, would you want to go full-blown, like, rock star mode, or just chill out with, you know, some drums, a couple acoustic guitars, a bonfire, you know, that kind of thing.
That's what. How much power would an electric guitar take? Would that take too much?
Just a electric guitar?
Yeah.
Not that much. I mean, I couldn't tell you exactly, but it wouldn't be that bad.
Yeah, simple is better, because I like my family, my mom's side of the family, they
I'm good, Tammy. Thank you.
A couple times a year we'd get together, not really a family reunion, but you know, just the local family. We'd all get together and have just everybody meets in the barn. You know what I mean? Then my mom and my aunts would sing while my uncles would play the guitar and shit. You know? So it's, I know it doesn't take much to entertain a crowd, but you know, like I said, not everybody's going to do it every, you know, every other day or every weekend. Like, I need a fucking break.
Yeah, you definitely wouldn't be able to do it. I mean, because if you've done it like every other day or even every week, you know, you're going to end up hearing the same song, same set over and over and over and over, because you're just not going to have time to learn new stuff. Because, I mean, you know, we're all going to have jobs and everything, and, you know, some family and, you know, all that going on. Because it depends on the kind of music, but like if you're just a rhythm guitar player, you can pick up a song. Like if you're going to do like lead parts and actually do the drums right, and, you know, it takes a while to learn how to play a song.
We already know Star Wars decorating the trees. 15 damn Christmas trees. Oh,
absolutely. I love banjo.
You put me around a banjo, I'm done. I'm sitting there all day.
I got one hanging back there and don't know how to play the first lick on it.
It's cool.
You know that's right.
There's something wrong with the people that come to this chat. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Acoustic would be the way to go.
That's what I prefer. I mean, but that's just me.
What's the maintenance on a guitar? I guess we'll start with that all day. Yeah, saxophones. Any horn, trumpet, saxophone. I love all that shit. Big band.
I don't know. Like when it comes to drums, I don't know how often you're supposed to replace the heads or anything. But like guitars, like if you're playing gigs, I know like they'll change the strings every gig, But obviously, if we're trying to, be conservative or you can play. Like I haven't changed strings on my guitars in probably over a year, and I mean it just depends on how much you play. But like you said, if we're just doing it like once a month or something, I mean you could get several shows out of a set of guitar strings. Last longer, unless you're like whoever and just absolutely beat the tar out of them, then they're going to need replaced. But it would all depend on how much you're playing.
See, that's where I'm kind of torn on the guitar and the piano, because I know eventually you're going to have to change out some strings.
Now, piano, I don't know a thing about. I'd love to be able to play piano, but I don't know a thing about it.
Yeah, harmonica works.
And then there's just old school, like, you could do like doo-wop group and beatboxing and all that stuff too. I mean, that's entertainment. I love watching beatboxing, and that's something, if somebody can do it, you're never going to have to replace anything.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, for me, I mean, to do something like that, music would have to be included, because music is, I mean, you could have the worst day ever, and then the right song or whatever, you forget about the day and you're good. You're ready for a beer and a bonfire and just chill out.
Yeah, I've got a violin will get me every time, man. I love me some violin. I've got some let's head and make your own instruments. I've got the Gores, I can't remember what the hell they're called now, but they're big. They get like 2 foot around, and that's what they make drums out of over in like Africa and places like that. So there's definitely a way to make your own stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've heard or seen cigar box guitars and all that stuff. I mean, all that stuff's real. I mean, that's what they had back in the day, before you couldn't afford an actual guitar, you made one, Same way with drums.
See, that's the problem, is I don't know how many, what would be considered a lifetime worth of guitar strings. Because I mean, during, like, when we're
that's why I was asking if there's any outside influence at all, like could we have, because I was wondering about that. Like, just so lifetime guitars, it'd be hard to say. I mean, I've got a couple sets for in case I can't get any more, but a couple sets for me will last 2 or 3 years. So I mean, that would be almost impossible to figure out.
Lisa Tribe, what's going on?
Let's see, what else?
Prove it. Let's get the video.
Because see, that's something I would come into, like anybody in here that's watched me knows, that I was doing videos of just, singing every once in a while. But that's just me looking at a computer screen. I have a big problem getting up in front of people and doing it. I have to be hammered drunk before I will sing in front of anybody live.
Well, I mean, it might be on like an about section, but I haven't really gave it too much thought. It might be. It's not a bad question.
And there's always, I mean, if you got the means, there's always karaoke. That's fun. If it's just for, entertainment, you'd have to make your own instruments as entertaining. That's true. Kids could probably do it better than we could because they're more creative.
Yeah. See, that's what I was trying to think, because coming up, I've got another community thing that's, about making money. So that could kind of double over too. If you're teaching the kids to make the instruments and to play the instruments, then eventually you can just make the instruments and sell them, like a roadside store kind of thing.
I mean, if you went back in the day, yep, that's where I was just going to go. And, like drum heads made out of, hides, and stuff like that. I mean, you couldn't have like your typical, drum setup, but just to have some drums, you could use a bucket and some hide, or just flip the bucket upside down, whatever.
Well, look who decides to join us.
I am so sorry, you guys. I totally lost track of time. I was talking to a reporter. I don't know if you guys caught my video today about what happened with my daughter's article. Anyway, sorry. Done with that. I'm here. Thanks for having me. Sorry for the delay.
You're good. You're all good. Family comes first.
Yeah.
Every time.
So far, we've basically just been talking about random entertainment things. Guitars, drums, pianos, etc., etc. Spoons, making instruments, things like that.
Spoons?
Yeah, playing spoons.
Yeah, you can do that, can't you? That's pretty special. I have zero musical talent whatsoever.
So you're saying you want to sing for us real quick?
Oh, you know it. No, I'll spare your audience. This would be my first and last time on your live stream. Hey guys, hey Nisi.
So, 1 second. Playing with the chat. I guess we can get into y'all want to go ahead and get into the schooling? And we'll just bounce back and forth, see where it takes us.
Did everybody have a negative COVID test before we start? Is everybody? I just want to make sure.
My son just tested positive on Monday, and now my wife's got 101 fever. So I'm infecting all of y'all.
I hear if you have a beard, it lingers for a lot longer. It like gets caught in there, and it just kind of like incubates and stuff. That's what I've heard.
Well, then Hutch will have a cold he had back in '98.
Okay, so that's funny, right?
Yeah, and when it comes, okay, we're gonna go to education. Never mind.
Oh, you're good. Either one.
No,
wherever it goes is where it goes.
Like somebody just said, I already lost it, but not just music. I mean, you got your typical stuff like reading and fishing, whatever. For entertainment too. Everybody. There's people, believe it or not, that don't even like music. I think those people exist.
I think those people are communists.
I think they're sociopaths.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Hey, Art.
Okay, so basically what we're figuring is we're just going to go on the assumption that there's roughly 150 people to 200 people, closer to 150 in this whole community. That's from newborn all the way up to we're about to bury you. So there's no definite number of how many students or blah, blah, blah there would be. But the way, the biggest thing that I'm caught up on is if we do a homeschooling type situation, how many kids per teacher? And then is it just old school, one room, K through 12, all in the same room doing their kind of thing? Or is it, does it have to be split up? And then what kind of curriculum would be the focus?
Well, I've got an opinion on that, if anyone's interested.
Well, yes, we are.
Absolutely.
So I went to public school. I don't have much experience with homeschool. My son is going to be beginning classical conversations, which is a classical curriculum. Classical education is how all of our founding fathers learned. This is probably how your grandparents learned. It's a lot of recitation. You learn an instrument, you learn Latin, and some of these core basics that they've generally just gotten rid of out of school, including, you know, the extracurriculars like horticulture and shop. You know, a lot of schools don't have these programs anymore. So for your first question regarding, you know, are they going to be all in one room together? Probably not, because there's going to be need to be a separation from grade school curriculum, which is the grammar phase, versus the middle school age, you know, would be like 12 to 13, 11 to 13, because they would be more in what they call the rhetoric phase, where they're everything that they've learned, they're now kind of like putting it into action and thinking critically and having debates and that kind of a thing. But again, I mean, it's one of those things that is so easy to manipulate and personalize and, you know, figure out how, you know, how to make this work. And then, you know, the parents have to be really hands-on. So for example, our community day, one parent has to be there with the kid the entire time. It's all hands on deck. It's not like drop your kid off and go, which we need to be moving away from anyway, because everybody's a freaking pervert. So.
That's true.
I don't know about the recorder. Like, I'll be honest, like 50 kids playing recorder badly, not into that. Hey, Prepper Tribe. Milkmaid, what's up, girl?
What's going on with your tribe?
Mrs. Papa. Oh, the deprogramming with my kids, my younger one, it's finally starting to pay off. So that's good news, because she was very much indoctrinated from about 5th grade on. She said something hilarious the other night that kind of made me feel a little bit good, like she's kind of like it's getting through to her. So for those of you who saw my video today, my daughter printed, she was asked to do an article on a Martin Luther King Jr. event. She interviewed a couple people, one of them being the chief of police, who said that he resonated with Martin Luther King Jr.'s words because being a police officer, he's pretty heavily discriminated against, you know, basically by his uniform and, you know, not the person, which is valid. We've all experienced discrimination. So I don't think that there would be anything wrong with saying that. However, her teacher had the editors call her and tell her that they would be removing his comment because it's potentially offensive. So as she's telling me this story and she's really upset, my younger one, who was kind of like very much woke leaning before, she yells in the background, "White savior complex." And then we just all started laughing. But so, I mean, it's getting through to her. She's kind of seeing the ridiculousness of some of this ideology and how it's just cannibalistic and it doesn't work and everybody in there is fighting. And that's what it takes sometimes, is just to get enough exposure to see how ridiculous something is.
Right.
Yep, pretty much.
Hey, Joe. Man, I got chafing. I've got an old bra on and I'm chafing. Woman problems.
My bad, y'all. I'm trying to keep up with the chat and do all that good stuff.
2 grades ahead.
I think, like on the application, you would have to maybe, because you would need somebody like that can teach welding, you know, cooking, you know, all that stuff we used to get taught in school, you know.
Like valuable skills.
That now is obsolete. Maybe not even somebody to teach cursive handwriting, as, you know, far out as that is. You know.
So what would be are we thinking probably what, 3 different classrooms would probably be the best way to go in 3 different sections, you know, with grade school, elementary, and then high school kind of a situation? Or is high school even needed?
Well, that's a good question. I think that by the high school age, you know, if we're talking about post-apocalypse kind of situation, then at the high school age, those kids are going to be needed for skilled labor at that point, most likely. But of course, like reading would be something of high value when they do have free time to, you know, there's probably a lot of books you want them reading. And, you know, if it's a more Christian-based community, you might even separate some of the classes by gender, because a lot of times, like in Bible study, they'll have the boys separate from the girls. And so that's pretty common. But again, that's the kind of the community kind of depends on what the climate is. So.
Because see, that's what I'm thinking. Because the situation for this community would be, you know, before the world caught on fire. So there's that cushion, you know, before you're, okay, it's us community, and, you know, so there's a little bit of wiggle room, you know, for, you know, comfort and bringing excess things in. But I'm like, we're homeschooling my son right now, and he's about to get his GED. He should be getting it next week. And it's, you know, literally that simple of a process. But if we're in a situation where nothing else really matters anymore, reading, math, you know, and then just, you know, the basics, but when it comes to stuff like history and stuff is where I'm kind of drawing a blank on, like, is that really a necessity to be taught, or do we just assume that the community itself will, you know, just through word of mouth have its own kind of history? Like, does it have to be an actual subject, like dedicated subject? Does that make any sense at all?
So you're saying, like, if we know for a fact that what we got's what we got, it's never going to go back to normal, you know, like it is basically the end of the world as we know it. Would they have to know, you know, what happened back in 1535 or whatever, you know?
Right.
I mean, at that point, if we knew that everything was done, I think like word of mouth, you know, is. I really don't see what it would hurt, you know what I mean, if they weren't educated on the complete history of the world, if the world's toast.
I think a lot of that's going to be limited to the resources you have available and what the people in your community, you know, remember, or, you know, what literature you have. But I think that is one of the most important things. You know, it's culture. Your history is culture. So whatever you could do, even in the form of storytelling and teaching the kids to remember and recite stories to pass down to their children. That in the Jewish community, they are known for their storytelling. Like these are generational family stories that have been passed down for thousands of years. And I think that is so important in like one's identity, your value system, you know, just your core, your foundation of who you are in, you know, in the world that you're living in. And those, I would want to protect as much history as I could and preserve and pass it down, you know, but again, you don't want to just make stuff up because you can't really remember. You're like, I don't know, in 1960, there was a guy, Donnie King, who fought in the civil rights, and just mixing up everything. But at the end of the day, even that I think wouldn't be terrible, because while you may be getting some of the details wrong, the moral really is the most important thing in a story, in any story, you know. And so, yeah, you might slip up on your facts a little bit, but I think it's still important.
Yeah, as long as the general sentiment's there, I guess. But it could be,
make stuff up too.
You could look at it as, you know, certain curriculum could be for an advanced course, just like with the kids now. Some kids want higher education. Some kids are like, I'm done with this shit now. You know what I mean? So it could just be more of a, hey, do you want to keep going with the schooling and learn this kind of stuff? You know what I mean? Almost not like a college situation, but the same kind of feel. You know, like, hey,
yeah,
you want to keep going? You know?
Little separate little trades. Yeah, I agree. I think that's valuable. Again, these kids, by the time they're 9 and 10, they're already going to be doing physical kind of labor and, you know, learning skills. all kinds of skills. So essentially, if you're seeing some of those kids are excelling at some of those skills, you want to probably nurture that. And so having some maybe a little, I don't know, extra curricular groups, or just completely splitting off the education is a possibility. But there are some things that I think everybody in the community would have to agree on that are core things they want to make sure all the kids walk away with.
Right.
And again, with like any homeschooling, you have community days where the kids get together and learn, but it's also on you at the end of the day to do the majority of you can spend how much ever time you want on history. If you want to spend more time on history with your kid at home, you can. And so there's the individual aspect of it too. So.
And a lot of that'll come down to, like, are there people in the group that can has the education to, because you can only educate to the level of the highest person in the group. You know what I mean? On that specific subject. So if it just happened to be like nobody in your 150 people or whatever knows squat about, history or, just, whatever, any kind of topic, then it's going to, it'd have to be up to the parents to at least teach them as much as
basically,
yeah,
there's going to be limitations in each community. And so it might be even worth having extended communities you have contact with, you have some of that information you're missing. But that's
like a traveling teacher.
Well, that's how it was, in ancient times, is we advanced because we had rivers where you could jump on a boat and discover people who knew some shit that you didn't, and that's how we advanced, by trading that information. And so within the community, you're going to have limits, but hopefully you have some sort of extended access to other people, other communities, but you might not. So there you are.
Well, that's the concept allows for different chapters, communities spread throughout the country. So it's always an option.
Mm-hmm.
People do learn past the smartest person.
Yeah, someone might have new ideas, or again, if even if you think about basic survival and the tools that you have within the community to share, there might be kids who grow up and are really interested in engineering and mechanics who can kind of upgrade some of the things that you have or come up with new solutions. And so again, some people are geniuses, and you might have one in your in your mag, and great. You got lucky.
Right.
But wouldn't it be funny? See, I'm curious about this. When you have a group of people for, that size over a period of time, would you start to develop like feminism and concepts like that? Would that naturally occur, within the community over time? I'm like, that's just something I kind of wonder. I don't know what you guys think.
I never even considered it. Now I am.
I just think we have tendencies to, we just have tendencies to those things, to kind of split on issues and focus
it's human
on
nature.
Yeah, exactly.
They would almost, naturally would almost have to, I would think,
That's how those old-timey family feuds developed, and they're like shooting each other.
Some Hatfield McCoy stuff going on.
Right.
I just picture like Pappy out there with his rifle, and he's like, "Hey, get off my property.
Don't come around here with your learning."
Well, see, there's some basics that, like science. How much of science would have to play a part when it comes to, especially if you're going to start getting into the gardening and stuff, because there's a crazy amount of science involved in that kind of shit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's picking and choosing. Like you said, it comes down to the material that you've got. You can't teach plant science if all you've got is
space.
Stuff. Yeah. Right.
Well, actually, that's a really good point that you bring up, because one thing that we would need to be making sure that our next generations were doing, we're documenting and taking data, because if we're having to relearn something from the beginning, like pH balances and stuff like that, we want to make sure it's documented. So we have to teach the kids to journal and like write everything down. And you know what we all do know, I think, is we know the basics of conducting an experiment, right? And we learned that in 3rd grade. Everybody knows that. You know, you have a hypothesis, you have a like controlled variables and all that stuff. And so we could conduct an experiment and take data. I think that, you know, you don't have to be a scientist to do that. And then but you kind of have to start all over and document the process.
Right. Yeah, that's going to be a big thing, is trying to figure out. Obviously, it's going to have to be handwritten, so you're going to need a shit ton of notebooks on reserve. Because obviously, you wouldn't be able to go digital.
Some hieroglyphics on like the rocks and stuff.
Right.
Civilization starting all over.
You're teaching more on how to survive versus. I think they could be married together. I think they, you know what I'm saying? You could make it a multi-use thing. You could have the kids working and learning at the same time on some subjects. Right. I think. Like, I can't pinpoint what they are right now, but I'm sure it can be done. But I think it needs to be a mix of both.
Yeah, they're both important. And the reason that the academic part of it is so important is because if you don't have a foundation in which to like understand the world around you, to explore things, to advance, then potentially you're going to live, your generations are going to live in constant survival mode, and you'll never recover from that initial survival point in time, because you're not making advances, you're not thriving, you're just in survival mode. And so it is important in that regard.
If you get stuck on, if you don't have the learning, then you pretty much become the hills have eyes kind
of. Exactly. That's totally what I was picturing. Oh man. What's that? What's that movie?
Delivery.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, now that we're talking about this, that's going to have to be a designated job, is just being a bookkeeper to keep track of things like that.
Yeah, you have to have a couple historians. Yeah, and that is, it's perplexing, because you think about how we have, you know, things like the Bible and, you know, all of this literature from so long ago, and hieroglyphics. And it's like, who one day said, I should make up a way to paint this on surfaces so we don't forget it? Like somebody, it's kind of neat to think about.
Right. Talk amongst yourself, guys. I've got a big critter outside my door here. 1 second.
Oh, I wonder what kind of critter. Hedgehog?
Oh. There's like 3 deer 10 feet away from the door, making all kinds of noise. I'm still waiting to catch the bears. We got bears now. I'm just waiting to see one.
Oh. I've never seen a bear in the wild. Never.
I hope I do someday. They got them on trail cams. The closest we've seen is 6 miles away so far. So
they're quite elusive.
Yeah.
You need to put out better trash.
Leave the cat tied up to a stake somewhere.
Yeah. Do you guys ever watch that? It's not TLC, Animal Planet or something, where they have like the Mounties that go around and give people tickets for hunting and stuff. You guys know what show I'm talking about? I forget what it's called, but I mean, there was a woman. What'd you say?
The game wardens and stuff, like.
Yeah, exactly. They're just going around.
What is it, Alaska game warden or something like that?
So I think they have a couple different places, but I think Alaska's one of them. And I think the story I was going to say was from Alaska. It was this woman, she had a restaurant, and this grizzly kept coming around. And so they come in and try to figure out what's attracting the grizzly, and they're checking her bins are locked and all that stuff. And there was a barbecue outside that was cleaned, but it had like a little drip of fat grease down the side of it. And he was like, this is why the bear's coming, because you have grease on your barbecue. I mean, you got to like be really careful about that. They have good sniffers.
See, Hudson Valley, that's been my thing from the beginning, is everybody, like, whenever somebody thinks of a mag, they automatically think G.I. Joe, and they don't think MASH or, you know, the school, or, you know what I'm saying, the nursing home. Like, I would rather have very few soldiers and way more farmers and teachers and stuff than I would. You know?
Yeah, because, I mean, nothing's going to change. You're still going to need farmers. You're going to need caregivers. You're going to need tailors or seamstress, whatever you want to call them. I mean, and I know people personally, you know, right now that think when this all goes down, they're worthless, and they're, you know, because they're handicapped or, you know, old or whatever. And everybody has their own special skill set. They just don't know it. Or, you know, like the ladies that sit around and yarn, you know, knit hats and sweaters, and that's very valuable, you know, I think. Just simple stuff like that they think is just worthless is going to be more than needed in SHTF.
Totally. And they can crochet fishnets. You know, it translates into a lot of other things.
Absolutely.
You guys have worth. You're valuable.
Right.
That's what I got to keep telling myself, because I've lost so much muscle mass since I hit my 30s. I just feel utterly useless. I'm not even that great at cooking.
I know. Beard told me. He sent me an email. He was talking about it.
Well, guess who's not getting dinner tonight?
See, that's all right. Now, when it comes to the VOTEC stuff, I honestly think the VOTEC learning would probably, like, if it was on like a 50-50 scale, I'd say it'd be more, VOTEC would be 51, as education would be 49. That's just the way I'm seeing it now. Just as far as you've got the sewing, you've got the, you know, I guess it depends on what you want to have as your VOTEC, because you're going to need nurses, you're going to need, you know, doctors and all that kind of good stuff. So
yeah, even some of those though are going to have to be basic across the board, and all the kids are going to have to know them. You know,
right?
Like thinking in terms of kids and students.
What's going on, cat lady?
Meow. Howdy.
Sorry, y'all, playing with chat.
Hey, Leslie.
Yeah,
yeah, you got 250 people. Somebody's going to know something.
Right.
Otherwise, you picked wrong.
Hey, Homestead on boy.
Yeah, and see, like growing up, I did VOTEC and I did shop, but you figure there's got to be a way to improve it to include husbandry and things like that to make that more of a concern. But like I said, there's got to be a way to mix these things, because, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, the education system is not that freaking old, so it shouldn't really be that hard to transform it to fit. You know what I mean?
Well, so the education of today, the public school education of today, looks nothing like it did in 1940 or even 1950. So they've completely tried to upgrade and redo it. And quite frankly, if you use America as an example, it's not working out very well. So we do need to go back to the classic model, I think, which works for most people. And again, like you're saying, if that's not working for some kids, we can focus them on a different area, something that's specialized. It's just, when you exclude the fluffing that they have in school today, where it's just awards for nothing, praise for nothing, and all of this you know, and CRT and all of this useless crap that doesn't make them smarter. You get rid of that. I mean, you're going to get so much more done in a small amount of time, so much more. And so you're going to have so much space for these kids to excel in so many different areas. You could even throw in a foreign language, I'm sure. Or your own community's like secret language. Like you could invent a whole new language, and you'd have time for that, because there's so much time wasted in the public school curriculum right now on, I don't know, stuff that I don't think matters.
That actually makes a lot of sense. I never thought about that either. Your own language or code in some kind of way. That'd be an interesting one.
I mean, a language is kind of started like that. It's like, we'll just start saying this stuff and nobody knows what it means except for us.
Right.
Hey, Jeep.
Yeah.
Fish sticks.
Home ec is definitely going to have to be a must. And
that's going to happen in the home. So you won't even need to do a lot of that, you know, in the classroom setting. And that's just going to happen so naturally. And I even think the model of your school structure and your community is organically probably more so going to work itself out than having to sit down and think about it too much, because instantly you're going to notice patterns. Kids, as soon as they're this age, are really good at these things or want to go do these things, or are ready to do these things. And probably after the first year, you have it all figured out.
Right.
But who's going to watch the babies? Who's going to make sure those toddlers aren't like walking around eating poisonous flowers and stuff and berries?
The old people.
Old people can't keep up with toddlers, though.
Hey, they've got those leashes that you can put on kids.
That's true. And if you've got your animals confined, you could also make a separate pen for the toddlers and just throw them in there with a little shade and water.
Right. See, that's the kind of area I was kind of like, literally, I was kind of leaning toward that. Like, hey, let's make a dog run for the kids. You know what I mean? I mean, that's basically all a daycare is anyway. It's just a dog run. You know, just throw them in there and, hey, don't jump.
Well, you're also going to have all these high school age students. I mean.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And that would be where you would be.
Child care and, you know, all that stuff they could learn all that there. I mean, of course, you'd have to have some adults on hand, but
really probably not, because if you're talking about high school age kids in this environment, they're going to automatically be more mature. They're going to be raised into having to be mature and having very high expectations.
Very true.
And so you're not going to see, in that situation, you're not going to see the teenagers that you see today of TikTok talking about their pronouns and crying every time somebody microaggresses them. It'll be very, very different. And you'll also naturally see these gender roles kind of just manifest themselves, where the women are going to do these tasks and the men are going to do these tasks. And it's just, you know, because that is naturally how that would work. You're just going to see that happen. And then that's why I say, would at some point the feminism show up? Because is that part of that natural organic progression of having a society like that?
Right.
Right. And I know, go ahead. I'd say a while back, I was on Miss K. Marie's live, and we kind of touched on that topic a little bit of, you know, get the kids involved in the work and all that stuff. So I don't, like, somebody said it a while ago, roughly 3 hours a day is really all you need for actual education? Like dedicated, somewhere in that range. Probably not even that much, really.
And if you go ahead.
Especially the younger kids. I mean, they have the attention span of a squirrel anyway. So anything past that, you know, you're just basically going to spend more time trying to catch their attention than teaching them anything.
Well, data shows us that giving the kids more time in school and adding on homework for when they go home doesn't improve their test scores or their IQ. So just dragging it out for the sake of dragging it out doesn't, I mean, there's no scientific basis for that. So absolutely, you can do school in 3 hours. You could do school in 2 hours. You could do, you know, and again, in that situation. Every day is going to be learning, including the weekends, and parents are still going to continue to teach you at home. And, you know, and I think parents will get a little bit competitive where they're like, oh, so-and-so's doing really good on that thing. We got to step up our Latin game or whatever over here, you know, and some of that social feedback's useful. A little competition. Never hurt anybody. Till it's a family feud.
She's all about some families shooting at each other.
Right.
I got a lot of siblings.
Mr. Beard, she's plotting on you.
Do you guys have siblings? You know about that life?
Yeah, I'm the baby.
Oh, okay. How about you, Tommy?
I got one sister. I'm the oldest.
Oh. Alley Cat Prepared Life. I haven't seen that name before. Howdy.
Every time I go to push a button, it's chatting.
I call Catskill New York Prepper. I call her Alley Cat because her name's Allie and she's in the Catskills.
Yeah, that makes sense.
By the way, Milkmaid, do you know how to properly fold a fitted sheet? Because I hold the belief that anybody who knows how to fold a fitted sheet is engaging in witchcraft, because that is something beyond the realm of my experience that I don't get.
I wad them up. I basically roll them up and stuff something.
Roll and go.
He's responsible. Yeah, that makes. See, I never thought about it like that. See, look at y'all.
That would definitely be the way to go. Is like back in the 40s, 50s. You know, just go back to the basic reading, writing, arithmetic. You know, and just build it from there. Because, I mean, you're going to have to. I mean, because we're all, in a sense, going to be responsible, like for our own gardens and such. Or was that like a community garden or?
Probably both, right? Like people would have their own spaces and then maybe a community one. I don't know. What would that look like?
Well, I was just, I mean, that's where, I mean, any kid that in any household is going to learn, you know, some kind of agriculture and, you know, stuff like that just naturally. I mean, it's going to happen. They'll have to.
And, you know, there's some things, some concepts, like, for example, fertilization and reproduction. A kid might not understand the science of how that all works, but they're going to be delivering baby goats and they're going to just see, I don't know, this boy goat was with this girl goat. Now I'm pulling this baby goat out of her, whatever, second butthole or whatever this is. I don't know. You know, but it's real life experience. And sometimes that the mechanics don't actually matter because you're just seeing the results of it and you kind of, for the most part, get the superficial part of it.
I think we have officially established that Kay Marie will not be teaching.
No. I think she should.
So the goats got their first butthole and they got
what happens around,
and then the baby comes out.
That is true. You don't have to. You don't really have to explain too much of sex ed when you live on a farm.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's
true.
And it really takes the weirdness out of all of it. Because I don't know if you guys have seen the sex ed curriculums today.
No.
That is something special.
Right. Had babies from the front.
Front butt,
front butt,
back butt. You got your side butt. Baby only comes out of one of the butts. I just want to see how many times I can say butt on Hutch's live stream.
That is the nicest word anybody's ever said on this live stream.
And then you can edit it all together. All the times I said butt.
Just 50 butts. Butt.
Hey, Alley Cat.
Well, that's why it's important to have relations with your special partner. and make more babies and people. You got to just,
the men need to step up and have their wives push more babies out of their front butt.
Now that brings up, I mean, it's not really related to the topic for tonight, but like your vetting process, your application process, you know, like there's a lot of couples, a lot of people can't reproduce. I mean, they can't due to different situations. So do you try to like, everybody's going to be part of this, has to be able to reproduce, or like the younger, like, you know, people are still able, that, you know, the age?
I don't think, I mean, it would be a concern, but I don't think it would be a mandate. You know what I mean?
Because I mean, you're going to you're going to want to progress. You know, you're going to want generations, you know, to build back. But at the same time, it's like, you know, you're awesome. You're an amazing farmer, you know, whatever. But your old lady can't make a baby, so, or you can't make a baby, so you're out. You know what I mean? That could be a tough call.
Well, they have, you know, so much value for the time that they're there without having those extra mouths to feed. So you can look at it from that perspective.
That's true.
I would be more concerned with a community that's hyper focused on trying to reproduce, because that can get weird. You guys,
yeah, that's some eyes wide shut kind of stuff.
Well, what's that movie where they're like have to all be quiet? It's not like the super. It's like a B version of one of those other.
Tom Cruise.
No, I don't even know any of the actors' names. It's kind of like a B version of whatever it's called, A Quiet Place. But there was this cult that basically developed, and they were out looking for like fertile virgins, you know? It's like that's like a whole extreme if people get too focused on that. But of course it's really important for the fertile people to pop out as many kids as possible, because that essentially could mean the end of your community and your legacy.
But if you've got the wrong fertile people, then you've got a community full of fucking retards.
Idiocracy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we got now.
Yeah, it may be an uncomfortable conversation. So, hey, we need you to have less babies, please. Or we're going to have to exile you. And that's,
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it's all you. Go ahead.
I was going to say, well, that reminded me of kids being born with some kind of developmental delay, like a legitimate developmental delay. And if you had one or a couple, you know, like in a serious situation, like, because a lot of kids with autism have very extreme behaviors and can scream, they can give away your location, and they can cause all kinds of, you know, like concerning situations in that environment. So, you know, that would come down to like, what is sort of the moral view of everybody around a situation like that? Like, do we all come together and pitch in to, you know, help this family out and help this child into the community? Or are you going to have a view of, you know, this is a liability and we have to exile these people? And so those are great moral questions to kind of like ponder in your mind. I mean, I've worked with kids on the spectrum and with developmental disabilities, and I love the heck out of them, you know, but again, like some communities will be like, nope, eat the kid. Wait, right? You know, waste not. But some of these more like deeper questions, it's like they're uncomfortable to talk about. And I'm sure some of you in the chat love somebody who has a developmental delay, you know? I do. So
that's what I'm talking about, G2. Like, see, I think autism can be handled, especially if you've got enough land. It shouldn't be an issue, you know, because chances are they're not going to be off the property anyway enough to give you away. So you should be good on that aspect. I think. I don't know.
Yeah. It's situational. And again, with the autism spectrum, it's a spectrum. You have all sorts of behaviors that they all look very different. You have runners that just bolt as soon as the door opens, and you got to go after them. And, but yeah, like that's an like I always think about like the worst scenarios and like play. I don't know if you guys do that. I don't know if that's a mom thing. I play over the worst scenarios in my head of like my kids being slaughtered and all that stuff. But I think it's important to kind of like think about those things sometimes, the really hard things. What would you do in that situation? You think you do the right thing or the moral thing.
Well, see, Prepper Nation asked in his chat the other day some kind of like, how many people do you think it would take to make a perfect community, or something along those lines? And I was thinking about 20. That way as a minimum, that way you've got enough people to work and you've got enough people to breed without any, dolphin fins popping up in the bloodline anywhere.
I said something like 12, and that I think it's more in terms of how many families you have, and the number could vary a little bit, but I think to have a minimum of 4 families to start is important.
Yeah, as far as mandating kids, obviously it would be nice to have to grow, but like I said, in the beginning, if this was a reality, it would not be shift yet. So you'd be filling up your property for no reason. But on the other hand, in a community like this, no offense, y'all, but there are a lot of postmenopausal women, you know what I mean, and things like that who are solo. So a lot of your, I'm not going to say a big chunk, but a decent percentage of your community is going to be, older people who, like, it's not even an option. You know what I mean? So.
Well, accidents are going to happen too. And so you might have a parent who gets ill, dies, or gets injured and dies. And those people be very useful in stepping in and taking over that role for those kids. Insulin. I've thought about that, Silverback, a lot. And I don't deal with that personally, but I know some people who do. And I mean, if you can't get access to that, you can't survive. I don't know how you would naturally generate that in the environment. I think it was insulin. They get it from pigs. I don't even know how they get that stuff.
No, the health issues wouldn't be a reason to kick anybody out. Because, I mean, once you're in, unless you just do something completely stupid, but if it's something that's no control of your own, you know what I mean? Something like that. Right.
Do you guys ever see The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio? I think it was called The Beach.
Mm-mm.
So this is interesting. So there's this group of people he stumbles upon. It's this beach in some exotic location, and you have to like hike through somebody's like weed farm to get out there. And it's like a totally secret, beautiful, amazing beach, and only a couple people know about. And so they start just developing this community there, and it's just men and women. There's no kids. And every now and then someone will go make a run for items that they need. And they're just existing in this, basically a utopia where it's just this beautiful beach. They have what they need, simple life. What ends up happening is a guy gets attacked by a shark. And so he survives, but he's losing a lot of blood. He starts to get gangrene. They don't know what to do because they can't go take him to a hospital because then that'll get, that will give away their location of their secret amazing spot. And so you see these people start to get really selfish about what's going on. And at one point they finally decide like they don't even want to deal with it because it's messing with the vibe. And so they move him to a different location just because they don't want to watch him die or suffer. And I think that is a very honest take on kind of like human behavior and human psyche, how you're like, you're ruining my jive here. And I don't want to look at you anymore. And then at one point, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, I think, like puts a pillow over his face and just kills him because they don't want to deal with it. But I think that these are people who don't didn't really have any moral compass, and we're just kind of selfish, narcissistic young people hanging out on a beach. And I think, and I wouldn't say that anyone in this community would do that, but if we're being honest about human behavior, I mean, we do some pretty vile, selfish things.
Yeah. So what you're saying is we need like a hospice on there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because, you know, we do have to weigh the like burdens with, you know, if somebody's terminal, you want to try and make them comfortable, you want to care for them. But I think that is good to have somebody designated to do that, so it doesn't become a burden on the community as a whole. And again, how are you going to deal with death in such a tight community? You're not going to want like the kids to see somebody suffering necessarily, but that's eventually going to be something.
Or do you want them to?
Yeah, exactly. It could be either way. It could be good for them. It could be traumatizing. Yeah, I don't know.
See, I think that's going to be one of the biggest issues is going to be when you do have things like that, whether it's, you know, autism or it's you get up and, you know, you start getting into cancer and Parkinson's and MS and all this other shit. You know, there's really not a whole lot you can do about it, you know. So it's.
Yep. And again, when you don't have, it would be interesting to see how it would play out. But when you don't have government and law, you know, you don't have laws restricting you on how to raise or handle your kids, you're essentially going to probably see some people putting their child who has difficult behaviors in a dog kennel on Sundays. And it's like, well, there's nobody's going to tell me I can't do this. I gave him water and put a blanket over it, you know? And so that you would have to resort to less politically correct ways of caring for and containing some of those children. Like that's probably what would happen. That's my guess. Right. And kids like dog kennels. They like that stuff. They love the big little boxes and that's going to be my merch, you guys. I'm going to have dog kennels for babies. You guys, would you buy those? Anybody interested?
I'd buy one. See, yeah, that's a good point too. There are people that will naturally gravitate towards wanting to be, you know, caregiver.
But you're right, Hutch. Like you said, do we want to have that be part of the curriculum? Do we want to have like a sort of nursing program, you know, for kids to just, that's their designated role?
Well, if you look at kind of like a field trip kind of thing, just to expose them to real life, could you do a field trip kind of deal? Say you had 3 people that were getting ready to die, you know, old folks in the deal. Could you have certain age kids walk around with the, you know, with whoever the physician or nurse is, and just kind of do, you know, y'all have been in the hospital where a doctor comes in and says, hey, can these students watch you guys, you know,
right,
some kind of situation.
Yeah, like the candy stripers was, yeah. I don't know if they still do those, but yeah, and they're like teenage, you know, usually 14 and up. But there would definitely be kids who would just be like you said, naturally interested in taking care of people. And then, of course, it's going to come down to the personal relationships in that person's life, because they might have a special relationship with someone who feels compelled to want to take that responsibility on.
Right.
A special needs area, super fun special needs land right this way, kids. Come on over. We got dog kennels. We got spinny things. We got
just bounce houses and puppies everywhere.
But Bug Out Adventures, you just popped another idea into my head. What are we going to do for entertainment? Should we have an amusement park? Could we make that work? Human slingshot? Catapult?
Hey, let's talk about it. It's all on the table. It's all on the table. Zip lines, all that shit. Bungee jumping.
Speaking of field trips, where are we going to take those kids? Make an amusement park. We got pony rides, obviously.
I'm sure there would be at least a few. Like if you gave Joe control over pulling the plug, I don't think he'd have second thoughts about it. You know, I think there are some people who would, you know, it's like, hey, it's, you know, it's got to, you can get sentiment. Like when a family's dealing with certain things, you got emotions involved and sentimental and all that other shit. But when it's, you know, just somebody's like, hey, this is my job. It could weigh on a certain person after an amount of time. But I don't think people, at least in my situation, I don't think death is as scary as everybody makes it out to be. You know,
well, it's interesting when you add the religious component in there, because we have you know, some cultures who actually would send off their old people, you know, like when they send them off to pasture to die, and that was like a big ceremony, and it was like everybody knew that at a certain age that was going to happen, and there's going to be like, bye, kick you off a cliff or something. But with Christianity and some other religions, there's a moral component where you don't view suicide as moral, where you don't view, you know, kicking out your elders or, you know, like exiling your autistic kids, you know, you don't view that as moral. And so it really would depend on the individual or the community. And so I wonder how much, if that would cause turmoil, if you had communities with differing kind of views on that. Because if my neighbor who's not Christian decides he wants to end his life because he's suffering and that's a choice he made, I can respect that. But then, you know, you've got kids involved and you're trying to kind of create a culture. And so I kind of wonder how, like, what kind of problems would come up from having those different views, like in such a tight community.
Right. See, that's why, like the basic foundation start, I've told this is not a Bible thumping community. It is not a Christian community. It's that church and state will be separated because it's, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, so.
But I could see. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I could see potentially you start out as, you know, just a kind of all kinds of whatever views, but we all, you know, agree on like individual freedom, and we agree on hard work, and, you know, we agree on respect and all of those things. And for the most part, that's workable. But I bet what you would see is your faith-based families and your non-faith-based families, or contradicting faith-based families, would probably end up eventually splitting apart and being in their own individual communities. But again, I'm getting way ahead of the whole thing, but I just love thinking about this kind of stuff.
Oh, you ain't getting ahead of nothing. That's the whole point of this. Is like, this is the first go around. I've got 2 more videos, and then I'm going to stop for probably a month and start completely over and go through the whole thing again and just keep fine tuning it down. So like this one is,
he sneezed himself out of the frame.
Yes. He completely disappeared off the back too. I think he's fallen asleep.
That was a magic sneeze. He just disappeared.
Take it easy, Hoop.
Well, thank you for your contribution, for volunteering as fertilizer tribute.
And see, that's the thing. I know it's kind of off track, but I guess it's still part of the education process, maybe. Some people don't want to be burnt. I think that's just the most common sense way to go, because then you're going to have to start getting into, okay, now we need a damn cemetery and all this other crazy shit.
Yeah.
But up a while ago, Jamie said a while ago, death could be traumatic to the children. I think seeing them get hurt would be traumatic, as opposed to just seeing somebody laying in a bed pass away. I don't think that would be traumatic. I think, especially if you grow up on a farm, you know, you're killing chickens and pigs and cows. You're kind of used to it. I think as long as it depends on
the individual's response to their passing. Like if you have somebody who's constantly wailing in pain and just over the top and crying, that probably will be traumatic for kids, you know, for younger kids. But if you have somebody who's just in a lot of pain but kind of handling their business, you know, I mean, I held my grandmother's hand before she passed away. And it was a weird thing to see, those last gasping breaths of the life going out of somebody. But it was also very special and meaningful. So yeah, you don't want to necessarily rob kids of having that experience, but each kid's a little bit different. And I think some kids could be deeply, deeply disturbed by that. And gosh, that's another thing. You make a mistake in a tiny community like that, and you mess up a kid psychologically, and then they become like a serial killer in your community. Like, you just, but that's the thing. There is no perfect way to educate and parent kids. There's some good foundational guidelines that generally work, but everybody is individual, and some people are they just become crazy, and it's no fault of your own. Or at least I like to think that it's not my fault.
Pretty much. Like I say, if obviously it would be like an introductory kind of course. You're not going to be like, hey, come on, 4-year-old, come in here and watch this old person die of butt cancer. You know what I mean? It's going to be, hey, come help us, pluck this chicken first. And then it's going to be, hey, help us do this. And then, like whenever I kill something, because I'm a big pussy about it, I'll put my hand on it until it stops breathing. You know what I'm saying? I'll do the whole comfort fucking thing. So I think if you got that kind of mentality and you show them, hey, this is life. If they learn to deal with the critters first, dealing with the person shouldn't be that complicated, especially if it's somebody that they're not connected to begin with. And that might actually make it that easier when somebody they are connected to does die.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Having that exposure, but with a barrier of it not being an intimate relationship, does prepare you for when it is an intimate relationship, and you're still going to be wrecked over it, but it's not something you can avoid forever anyway. And I just had a friend of mine, her niece and nephew, their father just passed away. And they're so young. And I just thought, what is it like for them to lose a dad? Like, what is it even like? I can't even imagine. And at that age, and how do you process that? And so it's just been interesting to hear kind of how they're responding to that. But you won't know. You won't know if it was okay or if it was traumatic. You won't know that till later. It's not going to really show up for a couple
until
of
you
years.
lift up your bed and find 17 bunny heads under there and shit. You're like, oh, okay, maybe we should talk now.
You're like, dang it.
That's right.
Well, live and learn. Probably going to have to put this one in the kennel.
Tommy said he just lost power. Don't know if there's been an accident or what. It's calm, so he doesn't know. But appreciate you, Tommy. You're welcome here anytime, brother. Yeah, calm down, Sophia. Always trying to start stuff. I saw a question up here. It's from Corn Pop, so I'm kind of paranoid to ask that question.
Corn Pop for president.
A gogi? I don't even know what that is. I'm scared to ask.
I don't know. Explain a gogi. Did we even say it right? A goge?
It's coming from popcorn, so it's probably going to be some something very interesting.
Poppies.
Milkmaid just wants to get everybody all doped up when they're dying. Like, here, take this cocaine real quick. That's
another like whole rabbit hole we could go down, is people who deal with life, with substance abuse, like the poppies or whatever is available, or making their wine in the bathtub. Because, that's just, everybody's life experience is so different, and people just handle their stuff in such different ways. And so how do you create your own AA program, or what do you do? Or you just let them be and just say, hey, don't fall into the fire pit?
I think it's going to be, well, obviously anybody who knows if I'm in this community, we're smoking, plain and simple. You know what I'm saying? At least my lot's smoking. So there will be no discrimination on that. But I'm a libertarian, so I don't give two damns what anybody else does. But I lose a lot of respect for people who, heroin, meth, you start putting a needle in your arm, I have zero respect for you. but it's, you know, it's your body. I can't really tell you what to do. So it's, you know, that's going to be the catch-22 about it is, do we help people? Do we just let them do their thing until they hit bottom and flunk out kind of situation? You know what I mean?
So you got to get creative in a situation like that. If, you know, because at some point you're going to develop like a council, right? Or have elders, or people are going to have to make decisions. You're going to have to allow some people to make decisions for the whole community. So if someone deems you as just, you're constantly intoxicated, you're barely functional, you're scaring people, you're breaking things, and then the council gets together and says, we got to do something about this. Can there just be a place like high up on a mountain somewhere where you tie them to something and they have to sit with their thoughts until they're ready to be reintroduced in the community? Like they have to sit up there and detox and then come back to I mean, is that overstepping, you know?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's definitely up for discussion. It's something that would have to get figured out.
They're just, you know, because like, again, I'm very much against detaining people because you deem them a public health and safety threat. So in a situation like that, though, you know, where you don't have a police force and you have somebody who's really out of control and you care about them, they're part of your community and they've fallen on hard times, like, and you don't have any, there's no legal accountability if you and a couple people just grab that person, blindfold them, and tie them to a post till they detox. I mean, that's a moral question. That's a kind of like gray area.
But after the shift, though, like, there wouldn't really be too many things to detox from after shift. I mean, if it's in that kind of situation, right?
After, yeah. I mean, people figure out how to get high. And if somebody's having hard times and that's all they want to do. But yeah, it would obviously kind of, I would think, be the last thing on somebody's mind because there's going to be so much work to do.
Right. Because, I mean, obviously I think the biggest issue will be alcoholism because some of y'all are some drunks on the bitches.
Well, and it's easy to make with whatever's around you. I mean, you can ferment anything mostly. So you can make tomato wine, you can make peach wine, you can make all the wines.
Toilet wine.
If the toilets are still working. Oh gosh, I don't even want to think about that. The going to the bathroom thing. If you don't need the plumbing's not working and it's outhouses. I mean, you get used to it. You learn to tolerate stuff, but I would miss hot water.
Yeah.
The hot water is a morale booster for sure.
Oh, he damn sure is.
Not all blow is bad, Nisi. You can do that, Jamie. Could you milk me, fucker?
Yeah, like alcohol wouldn't be a problem. Brandy, rum, you know, moonshine, all that shit wouldn't be a problem. But yeah, like you said, the detox thing. Well, see, there's a system set up to where if there's a constable position, you know, kind of like a police force, and you only get so many mistakes before you're, you know, like the severity of the mistake could end you up in, you know, in front of a jury trial kind of thing that could get you kicked out. So it's one of those kind of things. Like if you can handle your shit, then you really shouldn't be an issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you can get a little more complex to like the conservatorship where you can have this agreement with the family that as long as they're able to keep you under control, you know, in some sort of legal conservatorship, temporary or whatever, then you will keep your hands off. But if they keep impacting the rest of the community, then the agreement is you got to go get tied up to a post and detox.
Right. You were obsessed with just tying somebody up to a damn tree, aren't you? You could be like, go to your room for 3 days. You're like, no.
The Beard and I have been watching Longmire. Anybody ever watch that? It's yeah, so they're in Wyoming and there's like the tribal community and then there's a sheriff. And so they'll do some like tribal traditions that they'll put in the show for whatever reason. And they're always tying people to posts. And that's where I got that idea. And, you know, we can learn from our natives.
Yeah, or we could just put them in the kid cages.
The kennels. You know what? I think choice is important. So we could definitely present a choice. Do you prefer to detox in the kennel or do you prefer to detox on the post?
That would be the way. Options probably would be the best way to go.
Yeah, I mean, just to be fair. Yeah, of course you can slap people because I don't know. Yeah, as far as violence goes, you can't kill anybody with physical force, but slap them around a little bit.
Or at least you can't get caught. I'll say that. Joe wants to be my corrupt sheriff.
Yeah, Hudson Valley. That's not a situation I want to find myself in because that's actually already happened to us where we had our toilet leaking in the bathroom and that was just our stuff. So I can't even imagine like the toilet exploding with like the entire city's fecal matter into my house. I thought of that really creeps me out. Detoxing is for quitters. Well, hey, this is the thing. The freedom goes as far as you are functional. If you can still get your work done and you're not, like hurting anybody.
Yeah, because I've met some functioning alcoholics.
Yeah, nobody needs to say anything. That's a family problem at that point. But, if you come in and you're having sex with the pigs and doing weird stuff and, with blacking out and it's the post for you.
It really does, Leslie.
I'm not for the war on spanking your kids. By the way, I don't know how many of you are of the belief that you shouldn't spank your kids. They'll put out a lot of this kind of like pseudoscience data on whether or not it's good to spank your kids. But when it comes down to it, developmentally, like at age 1, your kid doesn't have reason. So you can't explain to them why they shouldn't run in the middle of the street. They won't understand that. So you can't rationalize with a 1-year-old. They only understand cause and effect. So your kid runs into the street, whack, don't do that again. Don't make a big deal out of it. Don't slap them a bunch of times. Don't beat them. Next time it happens again, swift slap to the butt. No. Every time I run this into the street, my mom slaps my butt. That's all they can understand. And so it's dishonest. It's intellectually dishonest to try to convince people that they can rationalize with kids who aren't in that stage of development. You cannot rationalize with a 2-year-old. They barely have language at that point. They only understand cause and effect. And that's the way you keep your kids safe. That's how you teach them to listen to you. And some parents have found that they never had to do that and their kid just automatically listened, which is cool. Great for you. But my kids weren't like that. So they got a couple slaps by the time they were 3, that was done because we could have a conversation at 3.
Right.
And then they could start to understand why I say the things that I say. And we didn't need it at 3. And, but I'm for an occasional brief spanking for kids.
Yeah, it's a good thing you clarified because the chat is kind of ridiculous.
Yes, dogs the same way. Animals will check their little ones, and it's the same concept to me. You're not hurting the child, you're not injuring the child. It's just going to startle them, so they're paying attention, and they are going to directly correlate that action with the previous action or situation they were just in. I don't know about that, honey. Yeah, you don't want to have a bunch of little SHITs running around. Like, look what happens. The kids today are so entitled. They have to have their own special pronouns, and they have to get a trophy for doing nothing. And where has that gotten us? China is going to obliterate us.
Pretty much. Take it easy. How bad I am. Chat, you guys are rolling tonight. I appreciate y'all. I appreciate 99% of y'all.
We got a bot. Is that a bot?
Yeah.
Do you have any mods in there?
I got a few in there.
Mods are asleep at the helm.
It really is. Pain's sometimes the best teacher.
Oh, yeah.
What's going on, Red? I've only had to spank my kid once because he had left the bikes warming up so they, be ready. So I think he was 6 or 7, but he's, putting his hand a couple inches away from the exhaust pipe, filling the, the exhaust kick up. And whenever he got up, he tipped his mom's bike over onto my bike. Literally the only time he's ever been spanked in his life. And I felt like the biggest fucking asshole in the world for doing it.
Oh, yeah. You should not feel good after whacking your child, by the way. If you do, you might be a sociopath. But, and I want to also add to that, because I want to give it full context. If you go the other direction and every time your kid does something that you disapprove of and you're spanking them, you're just teaching your child violence. So at that point, that's a whole other extreme, and you don't want to do that. That won't help you, and definitely won't help your kid. Then you got a serial killer, and you got to buy another crate.
Yep. Damn it, they're coming in deep tonight.
I know, right?
It really does.
What are these names? Are these like Russian names?
Yes, it's all Cyrillic. Every one of them Cyrillic. He's nasty. What's going on?
It really does. And that's, parenting is ultimately hard. You have to do a lot of things you don't want to do. And the worst kind of parent is the one that avoids any of that confrontation and those bad feelings because, they don't want to see their kid cry or whatever. And then you're not doing your kid any favors. So. And so on the note of teaching, the classic, in the classic way of teaching, when you think back to those old schoolhouses where there was like 30 kids from the community and one teacher, and she was like slapping them with the yardstick and stuff. The teacher had to use some force, but I bet the majority of those kids didn't act up after seeing somebody get whacked once or twice.
My dad grew up in an orphanage for a while, the nuns, and he said nuns whoop your ass.
See, but the nuns liked it.
He's illiterate as hell, so
the nuns like doing that. They like that corporal punishment. That's sadistic.
Sadist bastards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's all that sexual frustration, I think. No offense to any nuns watching. I just like to clown on Catholics every now and then. Sorry.
If there's nuns watching, I don't think they're very good nuns.
Gosh, a day in the life of the nun. That should be a reality show. I wonder what they do all day. Well, I mean, nun things, but like, what do they do on their free time? Do nuns have free time?
I don't know.
You know what? Prepping outside the box. I do remember an incident where I was spanked, except I was so little. When I look back on it, I don't know if it was a pretend, like, how like kids will like, or adults will grab you and then they'll be like, pat, 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 or if I was really getting spanked, and I don't know, but it was at preschool, and it was one of the ladies that worked at the preschool, and I was just running to the playground, and all of a sudden I was over her knee and got whacked in the butt. And to this day, I don't know if it was because I did something bad or she was just messing around. I don't know. But I still remember it.
Yeah, I got paddled back in the day. Pleasant Hill, Missouri. Only school I was ever paddled at. My brother had a standing reservation in there 3 times a week.
Wow.
But that was back, when you could do that kind of thing. I ain't gonna lie though, we deserved more than we got. I'll put it that way.
And that goes to, the soft on crime policies of today. There's no, like, you can get out with $200 bail for nearly running somebody over or actually running somebody over. And so when you don't have some severe consequences to anticipate, then that's going to dictate your behavior and how loose you are with, your morals. And I'm not.
And if you're not being told what you're being punished for in the first place,
King Nasty.
You don't even know what you did wrong. King Nasty, we were talking about education and entertainment.
And child abuse.
Front butts and back butts. Hospice.
So,
yeah.
I wonder, like, you know, if you in your religious communities or among your religious families, they probably want to be doing some like kind of church kind of thing, but like nobody's a pastor. So that'd be interesting.
The way we figured that out is pretty much like, hey, if you want to have Bible study, because like we got into it, like, do we need a church and all this? Because then we'd have to have separate days for the Muslims and the Jews and Jehovah's Witnesses and the Christians. Like, just take that shit to your house. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I don't mean a physical church, because the church is the people technically. So yeah, you could just be like, come over to so-and-so's house. But if no one, but that's actually interesting, because so there's like pastor school that you go to like, you learn kind of like additional context for the Bible. You have to really know the Bible. You learn a little bit about like translations, and you learn Greek, and there's like all kinds of stuff. You go to pastor school, right? But you don't have to go to pastor school to be a pastor.
You really don't. I think the only thing is for the legal requirement so you can marry people legally. So it's, I think, because I've looked into that. Like I can, like someday I might get to the point where, hey, I'll fill out an internet deal and be like, hey, I can legally marry people. But I don't know as far as anything past that. I don't know what it's actually, you know what I mean?
It could be for tax exemption status. But I mean, Scientologists, they just made something up one day, and like they're registered as, you know, it's just, I don't know. I think it was just a standard that was created at some point, but like pastor school probably wasn't a thing like 200 years ago. Like you would have a mentorship probably, you know, with a pastor, and you'd learn your Bible backwards and forwards. But now it's like a whole, almost like a college, like a trade school to be a pastor. And it's kind of weird, honestly. I don't know. That would be a whole, like, probably different conversation, but there's some weirdness about that.
It could fall into education to a certain point, because I mean, I know it's going to play a big part in some people's lives. I just don't know. Like for me personally, I don't understand it because it's, you know, it's just not my thing. So I don't know how much of a demand there is for, you know, hey, let's go do some Bible thumping. You know, come on, guys. You know, it's so I, you know.
Well, classical education for like Western civilization, the kids actually learned to read through Bible. Like they would do Bible memory verses, and that's how they would learn their letters, and that's how they would learn to read. And they would also, you know, practice their writing. They would write Bible verses. And so the Bible was like the only textbook you needed for school. And, you know, and that's another thing. That's a literature there's an abundance of. Somebody's going to have a Bible in your community, and it's just, it's full of lessons, like, you know, moral lessons. It's full of like awesome stories. It's full of, you know, really like beautiful language. And, you know, so it's definitely useful as a textbook.
If you could find somebody to not pervert it and try to make it, you know, like, hey, this is what you're going to be, but actually not teach the religiosity of it, but the morals of the story, then I wouldn't have a problem with it. But it's, how can you trust somebody, you know what I mean, to stay on that line?
You would 100%, probably out of every third community of, you know, like 250 people, you'd have a cult rise up out of that. Just going to happen, because someone would say they're a prophet, and you know, and that happens with Christianity all the time. There's like so many different denominations of Christianity. It's branched off in so many different ways. And then you'll notice that like people from certain branches of Christianity become cult leaders for some reason. And it's because that branch of Christianity doesn't teach biblical Christianity. So if you don't know your Bible, you're totally like, you'll fall for anything. Yeah. And like, there was a guy from the Seventh-day Adventist church who started a cult, and convinced all the men in the cult that he needed to sleep with their wives. And it's like, what? And people just went along with it. Like, it's crazy. Ben Franklin wrote a book. Ben Franklin learned classical education. He wasn't a Christian, but he knew his Bible verses, and definitely he's quoted the Bible, actually. He's quoting the Bible.
But see, that's the problem with religion, because there's too many of them, is there's too much room for interpretation and adaptation. You know what I mean? Nothing stays as original as it was meant to. Like, the Christianity today is not the Christianity of 50 years ago. That's not the Christianity of 50 years before that. You know, so it's ever changing, and there's always something. Like, I don't want to completely exclude it because it's needed, but like I said, it can be a dangerous weapon that you don't know is there until it takes you out, kind of thing.
That's why it's great to just have it be like sort of this objective textbook from which you practice literature from. And then so kids can dive deeper into that. And there's obviously naturally going to be some stories that they like, and then they'll have questions, and then that will go to the family to answer those questions. You know, if they want to get involved in the spiritual aspect of it, but it's still just a great staple as a textbook.
Right. See, that would probably have to be something that would have to be voted on to be in the curriculum. Because, like, I have no problem with it, but I know there's going to be some people out there who are like, no, I don't want my kid reading anything from that.
Right. Or if we're doing scripture verses, you know, can we do some like Mohammed scripture? Like, can we do some, you know, Quran stuff? Can we do a little bit of everything? And some communities might be cool with that. And, but yeah, I don't know. I think all of that literature is useful for basic learning. And again, when they get into their rhetoric phase in middle school, that's when you're going to start having debates. So you're going to want a little bit of variety in there, and you're going to want to have the kids to have some stuff to debate about.
That's true. That is true. I guess, like, nowadays, I believe debate is a damn good thing to get into. If you've got the opportunity to get in debate while you're in school, do that shit. But as far as I think that could have a place in the community too, as a mandatory curriculum. Would be some kind of debate where you can get into those kind of subjects.
Well, so debate is how you learn to justify your position on things. And that prevents you from being indoctrinated, because when someone is just telling you that something is some way, you adopt that as being some kind of absolute truth. But then, you know, it's having those debates and having those conversations that make you have to just kind of like work your way back and justify your position. And if you can't, then you start wondering where that information came from, and you kind of want to look into it. And so I think it's great for curiosity. I think it's great for learning. And what's a problem today? I was actually talking about this with the reporter that I was speaking to before I jumped on here. And he was asking me, like, how I get my news, and how do I know what's real, and how do I fact check, and all this stuff. And we actually ended up being a really long, interesting conversation. But one of the things that we were talking about is that he said, you know, we don't have, you know, politicians who are good speakers. So, you know, there's really both good ideas on both sides, but nobody knows how to articulate them. And I said, well, there are people on both sides who know how to articulate their positions. But what happens is that we don't have the attention span to listen to a full-on speech or congressional hearing. And I will watch things like that, but not everybody has the attention span or desire to do that, to watch those things. So all you're getting are little, you know, TikToks of somebody's bullet points, you know? And so debate.
Sound bites, yeah. Sound bites and not actual substance.
Exactly. And then again, you're assuming that person is telling you the truth about all those things. And then they don't have context. And so having these formal debates is really important for young people, because they have to sit there and listen and analyze the other person's argument. So you're getting your full, like you're getting heard fully, your points. And then you have the audience who's also benefiting from hearing this conversation and the back and forth. So I think it's so crucial to have public debates and for kids to learn to rationalize their positions and recognize that when you can't rationalize your position, either you need more information or you're wrong.
Right. See, I look at it, somebody said a second ago, if you can keep emotion out of it. Emotion can be a good thing, especially in the beginning. That way because I mean, that's what's great about debate is when you first start, you get emotional and then you learn how to calm that emotion and rationalize. So, I mean, you kind of need it to be super emotional in the beginning so people, can understand, hey, no, that's too far. You're not proving your point. It's counterproductive, blah, blah. So the emotions is a learning experience in itself. I think
that when someone expresses emotion on like a topic that's important to them, what it does communicate, even though it's not always helpful or useful to the conversation, what it does communicate is that person's genuine, that they actually have a genuine attachment to what it is they're saying. And so if you can change their mind on, whatever it is that whatever information they have or that they got wrong, and you can change their mind, then they won't feel so emotional about it. But it is important because it shows that you are invested in this belief that you have, where, some people just like to talk about issues, but don't really care one way or the other. But when it comes to serious things, caring about certain things matters. It does matter. And you need to make sure you know your information back and forth so that you can actually make a difference. Because if you're just getting all Karen and yelling at people, nobody's listening anymore.
Right. Well, see, I guess that's what it would come down to the teacher, though, because if you're that emotional about a topic, then you should be on the other side of that topic.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that is such a good learning experience when you have to get into the opposition's head. It's so beneficial. Like, I think for your own, personal discovery of your values and other people's values and putting yourself in the other person's shoes. It's so good for healthy dialogue, but I mean, also it's just like builds character too, to be able to empathize and immediately know, and be prepared for what they're going to say back to you. So you're already ready with a response, and it's great. It's a great muscle to develop.
And see, that's what's good about it is if you're arguing from the other side, then you should already know the talking points that they're going to bring up,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you have to prepare. If you don't prepare for a public debate, not only are you not going to win the debate, but if potentially you are on the correct side, you've left people thinking that your position is wrong. And so that's very dangerous, and you have to put in the work.
Yeah, Jamie, I hear you on that. Like it's the double-edged sword. You got to find that balance because you need the emotion to be able to progress. Because if you just don't give two damns about it, you ain't never gonna. You know what I mean? It's like if we had a debate on abortion, K. Marie's for it. I'm against it. So we need to switch sides and make that argument. Because otherwise, you're stupid. This shouldn't be. And you're stupid. It should be. There's really no progression from that point.
Mm-hmm.
But
see when it comes,
you don't know what I'm saying.
When your emotion translates into personal attacks on the other person, you've crossed the line and you've ended the communication essentially. So have yelling, raising your voice, changing your posture, that's all fine. And then that's part of the whole process. It's when you start personally attacking the other person, it kind of makes you look incompetent, like you can't defend your position. And so you're going to personal attacks. And we see this on the left a lot. More so than on the right side or libertarian, in the middle, because those people are operating so much out of like reaction, and so again, like when you get to the extreme, it's not useful anymore. And the abortion issue is something that I am emotional about. And so, but I I want to have those conversations with people because it is my goal. It is my intention to change people's perspectives on it. And I want to create a space where they feel heard and they're actually listening. So if I'm going, you know, and I think it's one of the worst atrocities that a person could commit, but I have the understanding, again, it's that empathy, that we've been raised in a society that said it's perfectly fine. And so we're conditioned to think that it's perfectly fine. And so I have to understand that that's how that person views that situation. And I'm not going to demonize that person for having that viewpoint.
Right.
I mean, I could even talk with a serial killer, you know, and hear their story and not want to, you know, jump over and punch them in the face. But
right, you're like, maybe she did deserve it. I didn't like the way she was carrying it either. Yeah.
Jeffrey Dahmer, the real story.
Right. All right. Well, we ain't got too much time left. What do you think about? Okay, so that's for the chillins. What do you think about as far as the grown folks? Do you think that they should have any kind of required education? Being whatever, all sides of the spectrum that falls on, I guess.
Well, I would expect that naturally certain adults would gravitate towards things that they're already good at, but that might create like an inequality in like the whole system of everything. So, you know, if you've got 5 guys who are, you know, great with livestock and then one guy who, you know, is good with tools, then you're going to have to dedicate some of those people and just make sure that you have, you know, like one is none. Like you want to make sure you have enough of everybody doing everything. And so, yeah, that would definitely be a thing. You would have to do that because you wouldn't naturally have people who are evenly good at all different skills. So you're like, okay, so-and-so is going to mentor you on this because we need another guy on this. So-and-so is going to teach you how to knit because your knitting sucks. Like, we need more knitting, like whatever. And it would be boring not to continue because, you know, I love learning. I mean, you get bored. You need to expand that brain.
Yeah. Because see, automatically, there's already a hardback library is a must, no matter what. It's just, I don't know if it's jaded from living in the world now that we all live in, like how many people are actually going to take advantage of the fact that they can learn something. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, this community would be a shit ton of work. You know, there'd be a lot of tired backs. But with that many people, it's really not that much work as opposed to doing it by yourself or just a single family. So, you know what I mean? It's hard, but it's not as hard as doing it on your own. So you'll have the free time, but it's just, you know, it comes down to, you know, the entertainment and, you know.
Yeah, the entertainment, that would be a great topic to like figure out how you guys, how everybody would entertain themselves. But I think it is important to designate, you are going to have to look at your community and go, okay, who's good at what? That's not enough people to do this. That's not enough people fishing. You guys are going to go be mentored by this guy. And you are going to have to establish that formally because it can't be like loosey goosey. Oh, figure it out, you know, figure out who needs what. It's like, no, we got to, because you don't want to get to the point where you have an emergency and only one guy can do this thing. And he's tied to the post because he got too drunk the other night. And, you know, then it's chaos. Thanks, Prepper Tribe.
She's all right.
I
only like her because of the beard.
I have my cat in the video today. So, yeah, like a little cameo from my cat. So all you cat lovers, come check out my channel.
See, that's the thing there, too, that a lot of people, as you can imagine, there are a lot of haters and naysayers on this kind of thing. And that's kind of the thing right there is a lot of people don't realize that once you bust your ass and you have those days where you did something, like you hurt, but you feel so damn good about everything that you've done. So it kind of cancels it out. You know what I mean? And I don't think enough people have actually done enough physical labor to understand that. Kind of like the runner's high kind of thing. Like, oh, you got your second wind, you're stupid. I'm not running in the first place, you know. But you know what I mean? It's there. You've got to actually get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you've got young people today kicking and screaming just about, you know, cleaning up their room, which takes minimal effort. But I've had experiences in motherhood where, you know, I got through like something crazy, like one kid puking, one kid with a fever. And, you know, like I've been in situations, high intensity situations where when I got to the other side of it, I went, wow, like I had no idea I could handle something like that. And it is rewarding in itself. You're like, well, if I could do that, what else am I capable of? Let's find out.
You'll never know where your boundaries are unless you just straight jump off them bitches.
Exactly. Thank you, Virginia Roots, for dropping that link. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it really is. See, a lot of people don't understand that. Like I've been trying to, I try to explain to my neighbors because I've done everything by hand here, and they're like, "Oh, why don't you get a bobcat or a tractor?" You know, blah blah. I was like, "Because I'm not you, pussy." You know, one of those kind of situations. It's like I appreciate the things that I've got done more because I know what it took to get them there, as opposed to you just hiring some redneck to come over and do it for you while you supervise. I was like, we have different, you know, I love my land more than you love yours. You know, one of those kind of situations.
And in this situation where you don't have access to those machines, it's going to be a huge adjustment for people who are used to functioning that way. And for the people who kind of did everything hands-on themselves, it's no big deal. Yep, agree. Totally. Poop is poop. Puke is puke.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's damn sure.
And that is something, circling back to education, going to circle back here. That is something that is so lacking in child development now, is actually learning a skill, working on something, setting a goal, completing it the way it was meant to be completed, not like some, you know, half-ass version, but like fully committing to something, completing it, is so rewarding. And that's confidence building. When you tell kids they're great at stuff they're not great at, they're not stupid. They know they're not great at it. And data has shown that when you tell a kid that they're great at something, that they will, the next time that they are asked to like, you know, perform or whatever, they'll perform worse because they're like totally have like no confidence. They're like, I peaked, you know?
Right.
But yeah, having like, it's so important that we bring those back. Like, you know, the Beard and I were talking about Shop, you know, when he was younger, and he learned how to use all the tools, and then he started making stuff. And it's like, a lot of people don't have that in the workforce today, in their jobs, where you actually complete something and it's tangible and you're like, I did this, you know, where some people are just, you know, pencil pushing and, you know, working on the computer and sending emails. And it's like, there's nothing to show for that. And it is kind of like spirit killing.
Yeah. That's what, starting at the young age, I think up until 10 years old, probably even up to 5 years old, is probably the most important if you're going to actually try to establish your child knowing, hey, you've got to work for it. Up till 5 years old is probably the best time to do it. Like I said, we've talked about it before, and you know, the younger they are, the more they want to be included. You know, just give them the simple jobs, and you know.
Exactly. And don't tell them every little thing that they do, and every time they, you know, crap their diaper that they're amazing, and you know, but acknowledge when they complete something.
My thing is too, it used to piss me off back in the day because like I don't do the baby talk. I'm like, oh, Gucci goo, baby. I'm like, hey, what's up, kid? You know, like if you talk to your kids in the English that you want your kids to speak, that's what they'll speak.
Yeah.
You know,
When
you start, hey, goo, you know,
we do. So I worked in childcare for a long time in education, and we are actually trained to speak a specific way to kids, which I now later in life don't think was a good idea. For example, calling kids friends, like, okay, my friends, we're going to go here, and okay, friend, maybe you shouldn't do that. And calling them friends, because I'm like, is it appropriate for an adult, like mentor, teacher figure, to be like relating to the child as friend, that's kind of potentially.
Yeah, that kind of takes away all the authority.
Right, it does. And it also creates kind of an unclear relationship between the adult and the child, which I think is kind of potentially dangerous. But also, instead of saying, hey, you know, don't do that so-and-so, you know, don't hit your friend so-and-so, you would say, we don't do that. And it takes the responsibility off of the child who definitely did something detestable. Yeah, and it's that socialist mentality. Oh, we're all going to take the blame. Don't get upset. It was a little bit of me. It was a little bit. It's like, no, you just hit your friend in the face. Don't ever do that again, and then you can move on, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah, because you got to let them know, like, hey, it was you that fucked up. It wasn't us that fucked up. It was you.
Yeah, and you're not going to hold it against them or hang it over their head. It's just you let them know in the moment. Don't do that again.
See, that was the big thing I had. Like I did everything I could to not be my dad. So it was one of those kind of situations. Like, I'm not going to scream at you to try to prove the point. I'm going to let you fail. And I'm just going to be like, hey, you did it wrong. And I'm going to let you figure it out. And I'm going to just walk away. You know what I'm saying? As soon as you figure it out, you let me know what you figured out. You know, I don't want my son to have my mind. I want him to be able to outthink me and think of things that I can't think of. Otherwise, what's the point of having a mirror image of myself right next to me? Neither one of us progresses at that point. Like, hey, I want you to be smart, but I want you to think different than me. That way, if I'm stuck, you can fucking help me in 20 years. You know, one of those kind of situations.
And that's basic learning to learn. You just teach a child how to learn, how to be curious and absorb information. Being curious is the best teacher. And we kind of beat curiosity out of our kids because today's public school structure is just handing information, put that information, write it back to me, and you'll pass the test. And so it kills the curiosity. I am that person. If somebody's kid is acting a fool and they don't step in, I step in. Like, sorry, Karen is Karen.
Yeah, see, that's the biggest thing is nobody wants to admit when they're wrong, or if they do ask a question, they're scared to ask a question because they're like, oh, they're going to think I don't know it. Like, well, you're hanging around the wrong people, obviously, but you know, they should be encouraged to question things. Like my kid all the time, hey, what is this? What is this? What does this do? I'm like, just shut the fuck up. But you know, those are that's what you want. Yeah.
I got backed into a corner and I was having, like, I've had some learning issues because I wouldn't ask questions because I would assume that I was supposed to know the answer. Yeah. And so I wouldn't speak up. And I got behind on a lot of things. And that I noticed that happened as an adult in the workplace where I'm like, I think I'm supposed to know this. Let me see if I can figure it out without anybody noticing rather than just asking questions. And I don't know why I had so much shame attached to asking questions, but now I make it a point to practice being curious.
Yeah, you want to ask shit, question everything and everybody.
Exactly.
Random. I kind of hear what you're saying, but it takes I hate that quote. It takes a village. I don't know. It could just
I don't know which comment he was referring to. But
I'm thinking it was the one random. Is that the one where she's talking about if you see some baby kids and their parents ain't doing nothing, you step in?
Yeah. Well, so then, I mean, like I do step in, so you could essentially consider that being the village. but again, I don't condemn the parents when I do that, but I check the kid, and only if the kid is doing something that's like particularly despicable. But I have no shame in doing that and just hollering out. And it's like there are some parents where you like look at them and you understand why the kid is like that. And it's really obvious. Doesn't take very long to figure it out.
You're like, I ain't got no problem being like, hey, you want to get your damn kid? You know what I mean? But that's pretty much the extent that I'll go to it because it's kind of like, you know, like I want to be that old lady that's like, I will beat your kid's ass in the line. I don't give a damn. You know what I mean? That's just not me. I want to be that person. It's just not me.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm honestly, I do feel like I'm performing a public service when I do that, because I have seen nannies or moms who are like, look like they just don't know what to do. And I've worked with so many kids with behavioral issues that it's second nature. And so I will come in and check their kid. I've had moms say thank you to me, you know, and I try not to be like, I don't do it in a judgmental way towards the parents at all. Although some of them deserve to be judged. I'll be honest. Some of them deserve judgment.
They really do.
And it's fine, because I can take it. I can always take it back.
Well, see, I've always had that thing to where, like, kids like me because I'm 7 years old. You know what I mean? So I have no problem bonding with chillins, and it's a lot easier than people make it out to be. You know what I'm saying? I don't understand it. I don't know if it's the outside influence might have more of a factor on, you know, the temperament of your child, if that makes any sense. You know, like a stranger could probably shush your child up, an out of control child, more than a parent could.
Yes,
you know what I mean? That's
why a lot of parents struggle teaching their own kids, because the relationship is different and the kids don't respect you as a teacher figure. They might respect you as a parent figure, but not as a teacher figure. And then it gets weird. And so that's a common issue that teachers and homeschool parents will have with their kids when they try to teach their kids. So that's definitely a thing that happens. But yeah, I think generally your kids will end up just like you or the complete opposite of you, because I've seen parents who overly obsessed over their kids and gave every bit of themselves to their kids, and then their kids are entitled, selfish little pricks. A complete contrast from their parents. Or you get entitled parents who raise entitled kids, you know? And so it's just one or the other. It's almost never middle. Drop kick your kids.
Right.
I think at the end of this live stream, at least one of us is going to have CPS knocking on the door. Whatever. It's a government agency. They never get anything done, so I wouldn't worry about it.
If you do drop kick your kids, just take your shoes off first so you don't hit them with the shoe.
Exactly. Never leave a mark.
Right?
Never leave a mark.
Yeah, don't be a dance mom. Yeah. Right?
Oh, man. You ever watch that show?
I've seen the highlights of it. Like, I know what it is. I've seen the fat chick screaming at people. And that's pretty much, like, I told my wife, I was like, I would cuss that bitch out in a fucking heartbeat. I don't even want to hear her voice.
And it's not just her, but like some of the moms get intense too, you know, and I try, you know, because I'm always coming down hard on the teachers and the public school and everything. But I don't like to be drama, and I don't want to be a Karen, but I'm not afraid to be a Karen. Like, because sometimes, you know, other adults get out of line and you got to check them. But like, I don't want to just be drama, but it's like, if it's important enough, then I'll interject.
Right. Monique, a dance mom, is there was a reality TV show a while back, and it's, you know, the little prostitutes that they got dancing and shaking their ass, you know, the little beauty pageants and stuff like that. It's those kind of moms.
Yeah, and I would say in comparison, they are way worse than the pageant moms. Those dance moms are gnarly. Yeah, but see, I mean, we all know somebody who's trying to live vicariously through their kid, and their kid's just like, I won't want no part of this shit, you know. And those kids end up so messed up. It's such an unhealthy dynamic. It's bizarre to have like a grown woman constantly critiquing everything you do, and like even the way you look, or if you gain some weight. That's
it is. It's pure trash, Monique. Pure trash.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's one of those shows you can only watch so much of.
Yep, just like football dads. See, that's like my son played football all the way up until 9th grade, 10th grade, but you know, because he wanted to. It's like, I don't care. Like, if you want to join the chess club, cool. Let's play some chess. You want to join the baseball team? Cool. Grab a glove. We'll throw a ball. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't put as much weight on sports as other people do because I'm like, I get it. But at the end of the day, you're just throwing a ball that ain't got shit to do with life. You know what I mean? So it does. You know what I'm saying? It's choose your own path, and I got you. Don't be me.
That's important because sports are a tool for learning how to work as a team, for setting goals and accomplishing your goals, for, you know, having routine. There's useful things. And like I say, sports it's fun. It's a tool for some of those things, but it at some point became like the most important thing. And so when you have these vax mandates come in for the school and they said, your kid can't play sports because they're not vaccinated. And so these parents went and vaccinated their kids for sports. It's like the importance that people put on that, because it became such a big part of the culture. It's kind of sad. It's like, yeah, it's a tool to learn those things, but it's not the only way to learn those things, because football didn't exist 200 years ago and everybody was fine, you know? So I don't know. I don't know when football started, but don't quote me on that.
As long as it's not soccer, then I ain't got no problem.
Not that football.
Yeah, I was a band geek and a jock. I played the tuba, the trumpet, and I was a football player.
That's complex.
I'm multi-talented.
What'd you say? The tuba and what else?
Trumpet.
Tuba and the trumpet. So you could probably hold your breath for a really long time. Do you lose that ability after a while, or?
It comes and goes.
Yeah. But yeah, like you can like fake being dead if you play those like heavy wind instruments, or brass, sorry. Because you have to learn to hold your breath for so long. You could totally fake being dead and scare your friends.
I never went to band camp.
Was there a band camp? There was, right?
I never heard of one. I never heard of one until American Pie. I ain't gonna lie. But I never went to an actual town, you know, like a big enough town to probably have something like that.
Well, that might be a fairly new concept, because I had cheer camp, but I wonder if there was cheer camp, you know, 20 years before I was in high school. That might not have been a thing.
You figure there had to be, because, you know, that you got Michael Myers and all that kind of camp, or was that Jason? Either one, you know, the 70s camps.
That's like summer camp, though, you know, where it's sleepaway camp, right? But like there's like everything camp for high school sports now. It's like cheer camp, soccer camp, whatever. They just call it camp, but it's just a way, like, it's kind of how I imagine if you go into a cult where they like starve you, they exhaust you, like to try to wear you down, to like, you know, indoctrinate you with their weird like ideology. That's what it is. That's what cheer camp is, basically. You barely sleep. You're constantly physically active. You're exhausted. You know, you only have a couple minutes to eat. And, you know, by the end of it, you think that, I don't know, you're drinking the Kool-Aid.
Pretty much.
Sleepover camp. I always wanted to go to sleepover camp. I mean, technically cheer camp was, but when I was younger, I always wanted to go to like camp in the forest. And now I think that's why I moved to Washington, because I was deprived of like that forest camping experience. And I'm like, I need the forest. I'm a grown up. I can do what I want.
Why don't you go sign up for the Girl Scouts and be one of them den mothers or whatever it is?
Do they even camp anymore? Does it depend where you are? Because like some of them, they just have meetings at Patty's house, you know, or Tammy's house, and they just have.
I tried to get the boy into Boy Scouts a couple years ago, and that's literally all it was. Like, we got a once-a-year camping trip and blah blah. I'm like, what are we doing? We're gonna hang out at the community center and talk. I'm like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah, it's like that's very femme, by the way. Like, that's not a thing that, you know, boys need to be doing, sitting around and chatting. I mean,
right?
Unless there's cigars, you know,
or YouTube.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I kind of roasted you by accident. All the boys like sit in here and chat. But, you know, talking about manly stuff. Ballet ruined me for Burning Man. What happened with ballet at Burning Man? Hey, do you guys know about the guy who like ran into the fire at Burning Man? Like he just was a pretty normal, regular guy, and then all of a sudden he just went insane and ran into the fire and burned alive.
That's the mushrooms, man.
Yeah, maybe.
And on that happy note, we're at 2 hours and 14 minutes. You got anything else you want to throw in there, Miss K. Marie?
I don't think so. I mean, I could talk forever, but thanks for hanging out, everybody. And sorry I was late. That was very unprofessional, but I had a crazy afternoon. I really do apologize, though.
Well, the 16 minutes you were late adds up to the 16 minutes we ran over, so it worked out. Perfect.
I'll be on time for the next interview. I apologize. It's a bad look.
Oh, you're good. It's my channel. They're surprised I came on time. I can't, Red. We're already 2 hours. I got to have people watch the replay, man.
Yeah, and if you didn't get to see the whole thing, make sure you watch it back so you can learn about the front butthole and the back butthole and all of the buttholes.
It is very important to your survival on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't get another 16 minutes. Somebody might go live later on tonight. I think Pilgrim's going live after a while, guys. So
I got to go make dinner.
Control him.
Mediocre dinner.
Like I told you, Beard needs to put on an apron and get in there. You're in here trying to do, sophisticated conversations. Beard just hanging out in chat. He could be in the kitchen cooking right now. Bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be corn dogs, and he hates hot dogs. He won't eat wieners. He's a little bit of a homophobe.
All right. Yeah, that's a good place to eat. All right, guys. Everybody in chat, I appreciate y'all. K. Marie and Papa's things are in the chat. If y'all want to go back up and get them and all that good stuff, good channels, check them out. I will see y'all next Thursday, 7 o'clock, the only time zone that matters, and we will be talking about something else community related. I forgot exactly what it is right now, but 2 more to go. And yeah, stuff. So yeah, good day.